My name is Just a Fan, and I'm here today with video number 5 in a sequence where, rather than I pick a particular movie to talk about, I've just been drawing one from a hat right here. And if you don't know what's going on, get with the picture. This is the 5th video by now. In all seriousness, though, if you go to the video description, you can find links to the other videos in the sequence, earlier ones. You can find the movie titles that were in the hat, as well as the movie titles that are still in the hat. Speaking of those movie titles, they're all movies that I've seen tons of times, and so I know them pretty well. They're all movies that I generally recommend to anybody out there because I think they're good, and they're also movies that I just don't see people talking about either enough or at all. Now, granted, I don't read from every movie website, I don't watch every movie reviewer out there, but of the many that I do, constantly keep up with and try to watch and read from, I just don't see people talking about these movies. And clearly they know them because there's lots of references out there to them and stuff like that. But in terms of an actual full review for the movies in this hat, or that were in the hat, I've never seen them. And so it's a cool chance for me to, give my own fresh, actual take on the movie when I haven't seen anybody else do that yet. So let's get to it. We're going to drop these 3 movie titles back in the hat. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to mix them up. While I'm mixing them up, by the way, I would point out how I like to do a non-spoiler recommendation and review first, and then I'll let you know when, but then later we'll do a spoiler section. That way I can have free reign to talk about the movie as much as I would like to. And so we're going to mix these 3 things up. It's kind of weird because it's like shuffling 3 cards, like there's not much to it, so I'm just kind of whatevering here. Got it! And one of the best parts is I'm going to show the title to the camera first before I get to look at it. It might be upside down, so let's just flip it over just in case. And now I get to look at it. Jumanji! Not the new one, the original one. I guess I should talk about that. So we live in a world, and the world has humans. And at some point, humans said, you know what? We need to make another Star Wars remake thing. And so Episode 7 came out, Star Wars Episode 8 came out, and only 14 months away from now, Episode 9. Star Wars Episode 9 is coming out 14 months from now. If you had told anybody that 30 years ago, by the way, their minds would have blown before the term mind blown was a thing. Terminator 5 came out a few years ago by now. There was Jurassic Park 4 and 5, otherwise known as Jurassic World 1 and 2. And so Jumanji, one of my favorite 90s movies, was not even spared by this weird craze we have right now where we have to bring back with remakes or soft reboots or even sequels. I guess most of these things are sequels to the original movies. It's just absolutely insane. So when the trailer came out for this new Jumanji movie a couple of years ago, it took me all of 16 seconds to realize that I was the most disappointed human on Earth at that time. I mean, taking Jumanji from the 90s, a great, charming, wonderful movie with good actors, a lot of great actors in that one, and to just ruin it with this horrible-looking movie. Now, I haven't seen the trailer for a couple of years, and I never wanted to see the movie, so I didn't, but it was the weirdest thing because people would agree with me. They'd say, yeah, this looks horrible. Why would you do this? There's no way this is going to be good at all. And then after people saw it, I never did, but after others did, they kind of came back and said, you know what? It's actually kind of good. Like, I was genuinely surprised about how good it is. And I said, no way at all. This can't possibly happen. I'm going to watch the trailer one more time right now just to see if maybe after a couple of years it kind of seems better for whatever reason. So give me a moment here. His name's Fridge? What? Oh, it's a video game? Oh, I can't even watch the rest of this now. Oh. Oh. And it's called Welcome to the Jungle, and they're playing Welcome to the Jungle. Do you get it? It's Welcome to the Jungle. That's the humor? You don't get water in your backpack? I can't even with this trailer. The trailer said, I can't even with this place. Well, I can't even with the dang trailer. Horrifying. So anyway, Jumanji, the new one, I'm not going to talk about at all. I'll probably talk about how the older one must be better because it has this, this, and this, while the trailer clearly shows crap, crap, crap. So that's what I'm going to do here. Again, this will be a non-spoiler discussion and recommendation for the original Jumanji first, and then we'll do spoilers for the original Jumanji a little bit later from now. Jumanji, the 1995 original movie, is awesome. I love Jumanji. There's so many great things about it. It's a very simple story, and yet also really charming, too. I mean, you got this board game called Jumanji, and it makes crazy things happen. And it doesn't need to be more complicated than that. What really makes the movie good is the characters who in it. I mean, you have great characters with great motivations, great interactions together where they're often supporting each other or tearing each other down in a few cases, great actors in these roles, and for the most part, good acting. And so, I say this all the time on my channel, but at some point someone told me that a character-driven story is always better than a plot-driven story. And in this case with Jumanji, that's exactly what it is. It's a character-driven story. The board game itself even says this is a game for players who seek to find a way to leave their world behind. That says it right there. I mean, you have these kids who, grown up's freaking tough. Grown up is hard. I mean, you have kids in this movie with bully problems, with, like, I'm not sure how I feel about my friend problems, parental problems for sure. I mean, these are things that are realistic and believable and even relatable in some cases. So it's like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. You have characters that are well defined, and then they go through this adventure, and by the end of the movie, you can see where did they end up, where were they, how they got there. It's like so clear and obvious. That is how you tell a good story. So to me, the characters of the original Jumanji movie are easily the best part of the whole thing. Comparing that to the crap I just saw for the trailer for the new Jumanji, I mean, the characters are like, I can't even imagine they would come even to like 20% of how good the characters are in the original Jumanji with the horribleness I just saw there again on that trailer. There are a couple problems with the original one, though. It's kind of slow at some pieces, or it's kind of hard to believe that the characters would do exactly what they do in the movie. Also, probably the weakest portion is the special effects of the 1995 movie. I think for the 90s, the effects are passable, but they're definitely not great or even really good in some cases. I mean, the lion near the beginning, when they first, encounter a lion, it's like, oh gosh, that is not a lion. So, whatever. I mean, that's not the point. Once again, though, the point is, what's the story? How do the characters interact? Stuff like that. But in terms of enhancing the story with the special effects, it probably could have been better, or it could have been done differently to make it less cringy in some places. Let's talk about the actors for a bit here. You got Robin Williams, Kirsten Dunst. Yeah, I didn't even notice that one for years, but she's the girl in the movie. Bonnie Hunt, another excellent actress. David Alan Grier, that guy is always a treat to watch. B.B. Newworth. I mean, just great actors here who've also done some great voice acting. I mean, think about A Bug's Life, the Black Widow in that movie, and then, the genie from Aladdin. I mean, these are actors who have done awesome things in the past, and they have a huge ability to make a movie entertaining and fun, and that's exactly what they do. A lot of the comedy comes from David Alan Grier's character, which works out really well for his acting and for what he tries to do. Some of the comedy tries to come with the two kids in the movie, which is Judy and Peter. I actually don't know the actor who does Peter's character. Judy's played by Kirsten Dunst, and it's kind of weak there, but they're kind of younger, so it's excusable for what they're trying to do and how they do it, but it's okay. And so their aunt, there's the two kids, Petey and Judy and Peter, their aunt is B.B. Newworth, and so they're kind of in this new big old house, and it's like, oh my gosh, this place is big, and it's new, it's kind of dirty, it's been abandoned for a while, we're moving in. And so that's kind of the idea is, we have these kids who are in this new place, they're not really sure where they fit in, or if they can fit in, they don't perfectly get along with their aunt, and of course when they find the Jumanji board game, things start going from there, right? That's kind of like what you would expect from this kind of movie. The cool thing is, it doesn't even begin there. The movie begins 26 years earlier with this guy, Alan Parrish, and his parents who live in this big house originally, and it's very nice. They obviously seem to be a wealthy family. The dad's kind of like this important business guy, and so it's like, oh man, this is like a long spanning story here. And so, but the cool thing is, for both sets of kids, well, it's one kid in the past, well, it ends up being two. For the kids in the past and the kids in the present, it's kind of like this thing where, yeah, we're here, and yeah, we're okay, we're physically healthy, so to speak, but we're not really sure if this is what we want in our lives. And this, again, these are young kids who it's like, how do you fathom and comprehend all these crazy things happening to you when you're trying to grow up? And so when they both run into this board game of Jumanji, I really like what they do with it. It's this thing where you hear drums beating, and it's like kind of captivating, and it kind of hypnotizes you to being drawn to the game. And they don't talk about how like the game is like alive. I mean, like a little bit, but it's kind of just speculation. There's not like some creature eyeball looking out from the game being like, I'm a alive thing. It's kind of this spiritual feel where the game's spirit is kind of the thing that runs things and kind of makes these things happen and captivates these kids. So I just like the way they set that up. It's simple and yet charming and yet mysterious, and yet it keeps the plot going and gives these characters ways to interact together that show how their characters respond to things, how they feel about things, and it's just great. So without any spoilers going on yet, the game, the Jumanji board game that the kids 26 years ago start playing has to be completed 26 years later. It's kind of a cool concept, and for a while you don't even really realize what's going on. It's kind of this little mystery of like, wait, why is this not working the way it should be working? Oh my gosh, the game's still playing. It's really cool. And so I just like that concept of, there's some questions that need to be answered, and without too much complication, they get answered and kind of, worked through. And so it really becomes these four characters. There's the two kids now, and the two kids from before who are now adults, trying to figure out how do we get through this? How do we deal with this thing? How do we deal with the problems caused by Jumanji itself? If you don't know, Jumanji causes all kinds of natural things to happen. Natural creatures, animals, disasters. There's a flood. There's giant mosquitoes. There's a lion, like I mentioned earlier. It's just kind of this, like, bring nature to you, bring the craziest pieces of nature to you, the player of this board game. And so it makes it more exciting, of course, even if the special effects aren't perfect or amazing even at any point. I mean, the water scene's okay with the alligators, I guess, but it's, more of how do the characters respond to the situation, how do they respond to each other, how do they finish the game. There is a little bit of an issue of, like, if you're watching this movie, you see them roll the dice. It has this cool, it's always cool how the board game does it. There's like a green circle on it. It's kind of like marble-esque on there, and some words start appearing that form some kind of poems or some kind of rhyme. And the rhyme says, what's going to happen to you? And so it doesn't really say, lions are going to attack, but it'll say something like, sharp claws, fast paws, whatever, something kind of rhymes, and it's like, oh, that's a lion, we better run. But so, like, when these things happen, they have to run, they have to grab the board game and move to a safe place or whatever. But any kind of sensible viewer would say, why can't they just roll until they finish the game really quickly? Yeah, that's a fair assessment of the movie. Maybe you could call it a plot hole or a weak device to the movie. But wouldn't that be crazy if you think about it? All those things happening at once. There's the lion, there's the monkeys, there's the mosquitoes, all these different things. All of those things happening at once when they could barely handle, one of them, the stampede especially. It makes sort of sense to me how you would say, wait, maybe they should really make sure they are safe before they roll again, just because of the magnitude, in some cases, the big magnitude of what effects and consequences the board game has. For whatever reason, the kids in Jumanji make me think of the kids in Jurassic Park, even though there's not really any relation at all, other than there's, like, the taller sister, the shorter brother, and the actresses who play the girls. Like, the actress who plays the girl in Jurassic Park, she plays Mindy in Tremors, and then the actress who does Judy in Jumanji, obviously, is Kirsten Dunst, and she's all kinds of stuff. It's just weird how they make me think of each other, even though they really shouldn't. But it's cool because, like in both movies, they both have their own sets of fears, right? Remember how Tim in Jurassic Park has a fear of heights? And I guess, what's the girl, Lex, in Jurassic Park? She kind of has a fear of, like, dinosaurs, living creatures, are those metosauruses, that kind of thing. She's kind of scared by them. When what's Tim in Jurassic Park, he's, like, fascinated, like, wow, it's a dinosaur. And so here, you sort of have a thing going on, not to those extremes, but just kids who have their own kind of ways of viewing life and how they go about things. They actually have this cool little interesting scene near the beginning of the movie where it establishes how these two young kids have handled the tough times they've gone through. Not to spoil anything, but they've gone through some rough times in this new situation. So it's this matter of what does the boy do to kind of deal with that, and what does the girl do to deal with that. And it's well established and well defined. And so as we see them go through the movie and, how their personalities affect what's going on around them and affect how they interact with others, and how the others in the situation kind of help shape them and reform them into different characters by the end of the movie. It's kind of like, you can see it. It's like right there. It's just well-defined. I guess that's the best way to say that part about it. It's well-defined, and the same thing sort of happens with the other two characters who are now older. By the way, Robin Williams and Bonnie Hunt together, they're the older ones. And so it's just like I just love it. It's this cool way where, again, like I said earlier, you see exactly where each set of kids were and how this set of kids grew up and this set of kids is growing up as the story goes on, and by the end of the movie you really feel good about it. It's like, wow, that is awesome. And the movie knows, like, the creators were aware of that, the way they made the movie, and by the end of the movie, with what happens without spoilers, it's kind of like, oh cool, like that worked out really, really well, and I'm actually really happy this happened the way it did. And that's what you really want from your viewer. You want the viewer to care about what these characters are going through, and by the end of the movie, if they're saying, wow, that feels really good that, they made it here, and they made it here, and this is what's happening now, it just feels awesome, especially when you do know what fully happens in the story with spoilers. It's just good. I like this movie a lot. So let's see, are there other non-spoiler things to talk about for the movie Jumanji? I hit the most important things. I talked about the characters. I talked about the kind of the setting a little bit. I talked a bit about the humor. I mean, it's not like a little bit. It's not a super funny movie, I'm thinking about like I compare this movie sometimes subconsciously to the movie Hook, which I don't know if Hook came out a couple years after or before Jumanji, but they both have Robin Williams, and they both involve kind of Robin Williams kind of having, he's older now, and so kind of dealing with some kids or some younger concepts at some points, and so that happens in both movies. But Hook is more like whimsical and tries to be funnier and slapstickier, and with Jumanji it's kind of more mature in some ways, or like a, and I think charming is still a good word, like not whimsical but charming, and it's kind of emotional in some cases. I mean, both the kids, the younger kids now in the present, and the kids from the past who are now older, they've all kind of lost some people. I mean, it's kind of crazy at some points, and so you hear about how they've lost someone, or multiple people, and they've lost someone, and it's like how they connect over their losses. There's even a point where where Robin Williams finds out something bad happened to his parents, and so the kids are there kind of looking at, and he just found out, he's older now, and he just found out that what happened to his parents, and it's kind of this little moment of like, yeah, our parents, this happened to them too, and he's kind of like, I bet you miss them. Like it's this really interesting, quiet moment where they just kind of connect for a bit, but then they kind of need to keep going, and so it's got some emotion there in surprising ways, and surprisingly strongly with these characters who are well defined, and so for the viewer, I think we can see that happening, and we can see all these things come to fruition, and again, by the end of the movie, it's all just well put together. Maybe some people don't see it the same way I do. I mean, so I was looking at IMDb, and the movie has a 6.9 rating out of 10, which it seems a little bit low to me. Like, I get how some people don't find it to be a masterpiece movie. I wouldn't say it's a masterpiece necessarily, but it's quite good. Like, I think it deserves a little bit higher than a 6.9, and maybe I just read into the things and see the characters in different ways than other viewers do. But I really do think it's a competently well-made movie that does what it sets out to do, and that's one of the most respectable things about it. It knows exactly what it wants to be, and so it bees that. It does that. It wants to be what it is, and it is what it wants to be. Maybe I should do spoilers now for this original Jumanji movie. I don't know if I talked like every single aspect of it, but I think from what I've said so far, what it feels like what I've said, I think it's a pretty good way to say, you know what, that's how I define the movie. Definitely go see it if you haven't seen it yet, especially, oh my gosh, especially if someone out there has seen this new Jumanji movie, but not the original. Do yourself a huge favor and see the original and forget the new one exists, because I guarantee it's a much better movie. I guarantee the characters are light years better than the other ones, and I guarantee it's less immature. Like, I mean, just watching that trailer, I was just like, what's going on? Like, how is this entertainment? How is this what people think is fun and entertaining to watch? I just don't get it. I apologize. I don't want to tell people out there what they should like and shouldn't like, because that's up to them, but it just strikes me as crazy that some people would say, oh yeah, we're going to do a new Jumanji movie, and this is it. I'm just baffled that that's what the conclusion they come to. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself on that kind of thing. I'm going to start talking spoilers now for the original Jumanji movie. If you haven't seen it, go see it. If you have seen it, keep watching. Spoilers for the original Jumanji movie. So pretty much like all the parents are dead. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier with the Peter and Judy, the kids in the present who are young. They lost their parents. That's why they live with their aunt now. Robin Williams, he lost his parents, and that's after he disappeared into Jumanji. I was tempted to say, because at the beginning of the movie this happens, right? I was tempted to point out in my non-spoiler section that Alan Parrish, Robin Williams' character, disappears into Jumanji for 26 years. But I didn't, just because that is a part of the movie you should know is going to happen, because I like the time lapse of like realizing that he just disappeared, and Bonnie Hunt's character runs out of the house, and then it just kind of goes to the door, and they had that cool transition shot where it kind of gets cracked and moldy and kind of older and stuff like that, dirtier, and it transitions to 26 years later. It's like, oh whoa, like, so those aren't our main characters. These are our main characters, but oh wait, those are really actually going to be part of the main character crew, because they're coming back, they're older, and so I just like how they do that. It's really cool stuff. I like how the board game itself has, well-defined rules that they kind of read at first, but then forget about, because it's realistic how the game would give them the opportunity. It's like the game kind of says you have to be smarter than what you've ever been before. Like, you have to be quick, you have to think on your feet, you have to do this and that, you have to get to the end and shout out your name, and it kind of lays out the rules for them, but it makes sense how the characters, and probably the viewer too, would forget about some of these rules. And so I love by the end of the movie when Van Pelt, is that the hunter's name with the cool hat, the postal worker, right? I love how when he's about to shoot Robin Williams' character with his crazy big gun, how Bonnie Hunt says, "No, Alan, no." She screams his name, and that's the thing that makes it all go away, right? Remember, get to Jumanji and shout out his name, even though it's not the person himself who got there. It's just a cool little tricks like that kind of come back, that aren't complicated, they're not shoved shoved in your face, but you can still identify them as a viewer and say, oh yeah, I got that, and I could follow that along. That was kind of clever and cool. And it fits the rules that Jumanji has made for itself within the movie universe, right? So, good stuff. One thing I can't even believe I didn't notice at first for years after seeing this movie is that the actor who plays Van Pelt, the hunter guy who's Robin Williams' hunter, in the past, that was the actor who played Robin Williams' character's dad. So, like, obviously the actor, the kid, wasn't Robin Williams, but the same character. And so, he's like getting picked on by these bullies, and his dad's kind of rigid about it, says, you gotta stand up to them kind of thing or whatever. And he's like, you're gonna go to this school, you're gonna live in this area. And the kid, Alan Parrish, is like, I don't really know if that's exactly what I want, or it's so defined for me, and kind of who he is based on who he is in his family is kind of getting him more attention, more negative attention than he wants. And so he doesn't, it's not like he inherently hates his dad or his family heritage or whatever, but just at that time he's just so frustrated, he kind of explodes at his dad. And so it makes sense how when his dad responds negatively, that later in life when he's being hunted by Van Pelt the hunter, that it's the same actor, right? It's the one who's hunting him, it's the one who wants him, in this case, to die, but in this case to follow these rules and that. It's just like that kind of image Robin Williams' character would create as a kid of, someone who's hunting him, someone who makes him feel bad and doesn't want him to be happy, that kind of thing. It just kind of makes sense how that would come to fruition in that way. So it's really cool. So if you never noticed that the hunter guy, Van Pelt, is the same actor as Robin Williams' dad, notice that. Another thing, by the way, just on the note of that character, I always think, whenever I watch Jumanji or think about Jumanji, I always think about Terminator as well. And here's why. Because they both have scenes at a gun store. Like, for whatever reason, no connection at all, but I think of how in Terminator 1, Arnold Schwarzenegger goes to the gun store and he's like, I need this gun, and he's like, we don't have those, like, what do you think we are? And it's that guy that really famous actor who is the garbage truck guy in The Burbs, just like this really funny interaction there that's really goofy. And similar here, then that's a more serious movie, of course, with rated R with killings and such, and in this movie you have that same thing where Van Pelt runs out of bullets, so he has to get more guns. I wonder if it was inspired by the Terminator scene, but anyway, he goes in there, and the guy's like, you're not a postal worker, are you? So every time I think of Van Pelt the Hunter, I think of the postal worker line, just because it's so goofy. And the way he's like, you have to fill out all these forms, and there's a waiting list, and he just drops a bunch of gold coins on them. He's like, or I could fill these out, or whatever. It's just like very interesting the way they have that scene, because it's kind of slightly goofy in a movie where at this point things are kind of serious. A stampede is running around town, monkeys are taking over, all these crazy things are happening, but you have this slightly comical scene where it's like, you're not a postal worker, are you? It's so weird. I don't know, just for whatever reason. I'm not saying it's a fantastic scene, but when I think of it, it just kind of has an extra little couple points for me, just because it's funny-ish and it's stylistic-ish, and the way it relates to Terminator for some reason, even if there's not a huge relation, it just makes me laugh. There's an odd Wizard of Oz reference in the movie. So the monkeys who came out from the board game way earlier in the movie, they're kind of running around town, which, I kind of like how they gave the monkeys the role of, we're just going crazy. We're riding motorcycles, driving cars, doing all crazy things. And I like how they're at like a video store kind of thing, and they're looking at some TVs, and it has the flying monkeys from the Wizard of Oz. And so they start jumping around and kind of getting inspired by that. Like, that's kind of funny, like a nice little touch right there. And again, it's like a 10-second scene. There's nothing huge about it, but just I like how they have that kind of attention to detail in this movie where they care enough to do something like that. That's pretty cool. I do like also, just in terms of the town itself, kind of going to heck, and there's all kinds of stampeding animals and craziness going around. I like the concept of how they have a couple touches of how the town's gone from kind of nicer, less crazy, it's sort of like Back to the Future. Back in the past, they had, it's kind of nice and cleaned up, and in the 80s, in the present where Marty McFly's from, it's kind of like, it's like kind of dirtier, more run down. There's a homeless guy sleeping on the bench kind of thing. Not that homeless people are dirty or bad, but just a matter of like, things used to be nice and taken care of, and kind of the attention has gone down. And so similar thing here, they actually mentioned there's the scene where David Alan Grier's character is talking to Robin Williams' character. And by the way, they know each other from the past, which is another great touch. But they're driving in the car, and he's like, he's saying, go to this one place, that's where it is. And Robin Williams says, near the church? He's like, oh, it's not a church anymore now, it's a Speedy Burger. Or it was, I don't know what's left of it. Like, there's just it's like a fun line. And of course, it makes sense for this kind of same situation. You have a town that was the way it was in the past, but they turn the church into a Speedy Burger, right? Like, it's just that kind of touch right there. It's a quick line that they just kind of say, and it's another great David Alan Grier line, but it doesn't have a huge impact on the movie. It just kind of helps set the mood and set the tone and set the emotion and set the setting for the viewer who's watching it, and so they can better appreciate the situation that the characters are in and how they feel about it. On the note of David Alan Grier's character, I actually really like that part of the story, even though it's kind of like a side plot thing, but the the reconciliation Robin Williams' character has with himself after realizing, like, oh my gosh, like, so there's a scene with the shoe factory where David Alan Grier's younger self shows Robin Williams' younger self the shoe he wants to make. This thing is the future. It's going to be awesome. It's going to reshape the way we look at shoes in this town or whatever. And so he's like, kind of not self-conscious. He's kind of subconsciously, he kind of puts the shoe on that one belt and he's thinking about the bullies outside, and the shoe gets, shredded through that, whatever that shoe shredder thing is. Why do they have that, by the way? And so he does that. And so later in the future, he finds out that the cop, who's David Alan Grier's character, he had a great idea for shoes and it was going to be awesome, but, Mr. Parrish fired me. He's like, yeah, it's a shame. And it's like, I know it doesn't mean anything after so many years, but I'm sorry, Carl. I'm real sorry. It's me, Alan. Like, I'm the one who ruined your life there. And I love, there's a couple different movies, oh my gosh, there's so many movies that make me think of Jumanji, and that Jumanji we think of, but Back to the Future, we're in Back to the Future when Marty sees, he's in 1955, spoilers by the way for Back to the Future, he's in 1955, he's driving the DeLorean right after he travels in time for the first time, and he sees where his house is going to be, but in 30 years, and the house isn't there, so he does this great, slam on the brakes thing, and the DeLorean's, like, slowing down, and it's just like, the way, and that made me realize this, the way in Jumanji and in Back to the Future, the characters just slam on the brakes is like a character moment, because it's so shocking, they just have to stop the car right now. So it makes me think, so when Robin Williams says to Carl Bentley, to David Alan Grier, that he's the guy who 26 years ago disappeared, and he slams on the brakes, and the cop car stops, same thing that happens in Back to the Future. Marty sees where his house is, but his house isn't there because he's 30 dang years in the past. It's another cool thing where I just love those. Those are my two favorite, not that there's many of these in movies, but those are my two favorite car brakes getting slammed on moments in movie history. But I like where that comes around, too. So after everything's all over, Robin Williams' character, he lands on Jumanji in the middle, and he finally makes it, and Bonnie Hunt screams his name, and everything gets sucked into the board game, which is a pretty cool effect, I guess. For as not good as the effects in the rest of the movie are, I do like how everything swirls around and kind of goes back into the game there. Except for the head at the end, that's really weird. But anyway, and we go back, and it's 26 years ago. Can you think, imagine that. Think about however old you are, 30-something, and you go back 26 years with all the knowledge and experience and maturity you've gained through those past many years, and you're a kid again. That's like huge. And so I love the concept of how Alan Parrish, the kid version, and his dad kind of blew up at each other, and they kind of went their separate ways for a bit, and he wants to run away, but then his dad comes back in, and he's like, I forgot my speech notes, or whatever. And isn't it a crazy concept to think that he would come back after just like 2 minutes of being gone, and yet for Alan Parrish it was 26 years, kind of a weird coincidence, but he runs over to him and hugs him, of course, because he gets it, he knows now, and he realizes how important it is to keep your family connection, especially when he finds out how later in life that his dad just went crazy trying to find him, and there's that one character who says, I don't think anyone ever cared as much about Alan as his dad, kind of thing. He's like, man, my dad really honestly cared, and it's just awesome. And also, again, back to the David Alan Grier character thing, he has the maturity now to want to tell the truth and kind of save Carl Bentley and say, you know what, it wasn't him who put the shoe, he didn't ruin that shoe, that was me, and I'm sorry, it wasn't him. And it's like, thanks for telling me. And it's just like it's like, man, that's huge. It's just a little line and a little gesture, and not even a gesture, but a little honest truth about what really happened at the shoe factory. But it has such a big, profound impact on the characters, on the viewer, essentially, and also Carl Bentley's life. Because if you think about how much of an effect that has, it's kind of like honesty's being built, it's using the maturity, it's using the knowledge he had of the future and the past, and it just kind of all comes together in a pretty cool way. And again, not even that huge, it's kind of, just kind of through some basic dialogue there, but the meaning behind it is all there because we know the characters, and that's again what makes the movie so dang good. A couple other moments I like in the movie happen to be when they're all finally together to restart playing the game. You have Judy and Peter, you have Bonnie Hunt and Robin Williams. They kind of come back together, and like we all need to play. But Bonnie Hunt's character, who's been called crazy her whole life, and they establish that well with a little bit of expository dialogue by her saying, do you think anybody showed up to my 6th birthday party or whatever, 16th birthday party? People have been calling me crazy ever since I told them my friend got sucked into a board game. Like, it's a very Bonnie Hunt well delivered line kind of thing. But I like how they're trying to get her to play. And so Robin Williams told us, hey, just give me the dice and you can go home. And he moves his hand when she throws him down. He does that little snicker at her. It's kind of like he's and she's like, oh my gosh, what did you do? And he kind of has that aura of like, I've had to deal with 26 years in the freaking jungle. Like I've had to become, witty and smart, and like I've had to survive. And so it's one of his things where he's kind of like one of his tricks he's kind of either picked up throughout that, or he had when he was a kid, where it's just like he kind of has this this air of like I'm trying to be a respectable human at this point for sure, but also like that little bit of the feral instinct in him kind of had to come out for a second to trick her, to get her to roll the dice on the board game. Like it's just kind of a cool touch like that. I also like that scene how they're in his parents' sitting room or whatever, and there's like a sword above their fireplace because of course there would be from whatever I guess he's a shoe salesman, which is amazing to think that that's like a huge like wealthy thing. Maybe it is, I just don't know, but it makes sense how with the personality and the house that Alan Parrish's dad has and has lived in, that there would be a sword above the fireplace, that he uses to cut the giant what's it called, tentacle of a plant or whatever, the stem of a plant. It's just good stuff. Little touches that are just it's so well themed for what the movie is and what the movie's trying to do and the characters in it. I like how they have those little things where just kind of what can we use around us? Oh, it makes sense how there's a sword there. Let's use a sword. Cut the rope. I was gonna say rope. Cut the stem of the plant, or like its tongue or whatever. I don't even know what kind of plant that is. But again, good stuff that just makes me enjoy the movie as I'm watching it, because it feels like what a Jumanji movie should be based on the characters we have and based on the story we have. I do think I'm pretty done talking about Jumanji for now, but I would want to mention just the ending really quick, just because of how I do enjoy it. And some people could consider it very cheesy or very like so obviously happily ever after. It's almost to a point of like lame, but I think it works together because it's the way things have all come together and like how about this, fallen into place. We have your Judy and Peter characters, you have your Bonnie Hunt and Robin Williams characters, and the way their lives kind of after all this is over, and we kind of go back to the past and we kind of try again. We get a reset, which not everyone gets to do. It's cool how things fall together. So like Robin Williams is in the Santa outfit. He's like having fun for the Christmas work party or whatever. He's on the phone with his dad, and that shows right there. He's like, we'll get you at the airport tomorrow. Don't worry. We'll see you soon. We'll see you really soon or whatever. That shows that he and his parents are good. That there was that problem before, but that's obviously been worked through, and it's all good now, which is huge. And then you have Bonnie Hunt's character. She's pregnant, so you have that. And then you have the two people who arrive to the work party. It's very full of people, but you have them arrive. And like, have you met our kids yet? And then boom, it's Judy and Peter. And that kind of implies that at some point, Robin Williams and Bonnie Hunt, they kind of searched out the parents of Judy and Peter because they want to meet the kids again. Because you can't go through all the adventurous stuff they went through and not try to see the kids again when they're going to be alive. And also they had to be there to make sure that the parents don't go skiing, because no one else in the whole world would know that. And on the skiing trip, they end up dying. So I do like that scene where they say, oh, well, we want to start soon, but we're thinking about going on our skiing trip, and Bonnie Hunt and Robin Williams are like, no! They have to scream, like, don't go, and the whole house goes quiet. It's kind of funny and comical, but also, if you think about it, it's like the most important thing they've said maybe their whole lives, to save these kids' parents from death. It's like just a cool thing where after you know what you know and you've learned what you've learned and you know what's important, you know what to say, you try to, get people out of these horrible situations they're going to be in. It just works really well. And so they get to meet the kids again, they have their parents are okay, and they even have like they're all singing Christmas carols or whatever, and David Alan Grier's there playing the guitar or piano or something. He's like singing all loudly, and so he's there too, and he's happy. It's this nice little thing where, yes, everyone's very happy, and it's obviously cheesy to a degree, but it makes sense why the characters, after what they went through, would get to that situation, especially with, the two characters going back with what they know. You go to the future trying to do your best and try your absolute darndest to make sure that things work out the way they really should work out for these people who are really good people. It's cool. I like that. And so then the actual ending is the board game is like in Malaysia or something. I forgot what it says. It says like, meanwhile in Malaysia or wherever, and there's like the board game, the Jumanji games on the beach, and it's drumming again, and there's characters who are like, oh, what's that drumming? And so that's the actual ending, which I can appreciate. It's that's almost cheesier to me than the other end, or the ending of the characters part of the story. But I do like it because I like how it says to the viewer, don't forget, Jumanji's still out there. This is the real reason why these things happen. It's kind of funny because I talked about how this is a character-driven movie, and it was, and the characters did all these things for themselves and each other by the end, but it really was it's kind of like a reminder saying, like, don't forget, like, this is the reason all this happened. Like, the board game itself, that's the real heart of the story in a way, you could say. So I do like how they remind us and show us that Jumanji's still out there. Great. Do we need to have that be a sequel? No. Did it ever need to be a remake sequel thing, whatever it is? Most definitely not. At least something like that. Oh my gosh, just makes me sick. But that right there is the original Jumanji. So that's my review of the original Jumanji movie. I hope it was as fun to watch for you as it was for me to make, and it really is a blast. I love this whole drawing from a hat thing. Super fun because I don't know what I'm going to talk about, so it's a nice little challenge to try to figure out on the fly about a movie I love so much. How do I articulate how I feel about it? How do I say what I want to say and be genuine about it? It does take a lot of takes, but it's a lot of fun trying to figure out how to express my love for some movies when I don't even know which movie it's going to be. And feel free, by the way, to leave some comments or send some messages, or you can email me. But you can challenge what I said about Jumanji, or you can agree with it. You can say anything you want to say. And if you want to email, feel free to use contactjustafan@gmail.com. I see that email multiple times a day, so I'll always see anything anyone sends to me on that. Speaking of the hat thing, by the way, there's only 2 left in here. There's only 2 movies left. We have Galaxy Quest, an awesome movie. I love that one, left over. And we also have Clue. I am super excited about this one. So those are still in the running for being pulled from a hat, and at some point we'll get those going. So is that everything? I think that's everything. Thanks very much for watching. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to go not ever watch the new Jumanji movie, but I will watch and always appreciate the original one. Speaking of which, I can hear some drums playing right now, so I'm going to go check that out.